Okay, hello and welcome. I wanted to make a quick little explanation on Nightgrip Runic cages, the new unique gloves in 3.15, and hopefully my assistant here, Riss of Abram, will help me with that. First of all, I wanted to go a little bit into detail of how they work, because at first I thought they were garbage because of some assumptions I had. However, I realized that they might not be that bad. Okay, you gain added chaos damage equal to 25% of ward. Fair? Okay, the more ward we have, the better the gloves. 75% of damage bypasses ward. Now that's a bit of a downside since we are going to be stacking ward and then making it useless immediately. If you look in your defense tab, the ward also needs 5 seconds to replenish. So not only do we only have a quarter of the ward, we also take 5 seconds to replenish it. However, the way it's worded is the damage bypasses it, which thankfully does not reduce our ward number, which means we get the full chaos damage benefit out of it. Second, very important thing is that we get the chaos damage no matter what, if our ward is active or not. Right now it's active, right now it's not active. As you see, my main hand chaos damage has not changed. The only time my main hand chaos damage changes is when I unequip my gloves. If I equip them again, I get the chaos damage back. So that's another great thing that might not be explained immediately, because we always have the ward. It might not be active, but we have it. So we would never lose the chaos damage. Next thing, I want to go into like how to scale the ward number, how to bump it up as high as possible. There's a couple of simple ways, there's a couple of harder ways. The simple way is obviously equipping equipment with more ward. A helmet, there's possible boots, or just quality up the gloves. That is how you're going to get your base ward. That alone will not be enough to make the gloves useful. So next thing we have is flasks. You have the new iron flasks, which just add 200 flat ward, and on use will replenish your ward. What does that mean? First of all, yes, when you use your flasks, you do get more chaos damage. I will show that immediately, but first, also, let me avert your attention to the increased effectiveness of the flask. This also works with the ward they provide. Might be obvious to some, might not be obvious to others. But the more flask effectiveness you have, the more ward you're going to be getting from using the ward flask. So when I pop the ward flask, we go up to 380 flat chaos damage, and our ward spiked. However, the duration is super short in this case. You can also scale that up, you can quality up the flask, whatever. Another flask people might be tempted to use is the Olroth's Resolve Unique Flask. Also gives you ward, but it gives you 70% less ward during flask effect, and that's a global effect. Which means that as soon as we use this flask, not only is 75% of the damage gonna bypass our ward, we're also gonna have 70% less ward, which never is great. Sure, the ward will not break during the flask effect, but we will be extremely vulnerable during it. So I will wait for my ward to replenish, then get broken again, and as soon as I use the flask, you see it goes up to 215. And then when the flask stops, back to 600. One of the benefits of iron flasks is, as you saw, as I pop the flask, the ward immediately recharges, so you can potentially take 2 large hits in a row. Don't count on it. Okay, so iron flasks, great. Unique iron flasks, garbage. And I checked all the other unique iron flasks. None of them really work with Nightgrip Runic cages. The only one that could be considered was the Olroth flask. So I didn't even bother picking up the other ones. They don't have any special interactions with ward per se, so who cares? Next thing, how can you scale ward even higher? Global defenses. The easiest way, Skin of the Loyal. Most people know about this item. It's not a great item, it's not a bad item. It's a bit little clunky, but hey, 100% increased global defenses means when I equip it, I double my ward. Let's test it. Yeah, there we go. We doubled our ward. Great. Another item that can do that, Skava. Every white socket, more global defenses. Equip it, even more ward. And this easily scales your chaos damage into quite chunky levels. 500 flat chaos damage from gloves. It's pretty nice if you don't need specific helmet or specific boots. But that's just a beginning. Next thing. There are some other items that also scale global defenses that might be a little harder to come by. One of them would be a clutching talisman. It's a tier 2 talisman, which means you can also use betrayal mechanics to turn any amulet into a tier 2 talisman, and hopefully you hit increased global defenses on it. That is one of the ways to do it. I would not recommend the unique one because it's pretty garbage for stacking ward. Next thing is Grasping Mail, and this is the very, very difficult, like, if you want to incorporate this into your build, this is going to be your endgame high tier crafting project. You need 60 breach rings to craft a Grasping Mail. And when you craft a Grasping Mail, you are just rolling the dice. You are not guaranteed to get anything. What happens? As you can read, upon creating this body armor, the vendor recipe will create 1 to 3 unique mods on the item. The item can have 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. It randomly chooses 3 out of this list. The list is 25 affixes long, and you only get 1 to 3. And the only one that you're really interested in is the Chayula's prefix, 100% increased global defenses. So why is it so important to use this over, well, Skin of the Loyal? Well, because this opens up an actual armor slot. If you turn this in, it's just a rare item. You can craft on it. You can remove affixes. You can change the sockets. You can do whatever you want with them, as long as you keep in mind that if you have the Chayula prefix, you wanna preserve prefixes at all costs. You can craft with meta mods and use prefixes cannot be changed, and then whatever you want, but just keep prefixes. You can also eventually use Conqueror orbs on that, or Conqueror Exalted orbs, and even add influence to the item itself. So technically you can craft a very, very strong armor with 100% increased defenses, which is, in my opinion, fairly amazing, especially for something like that. Now, question. How high does this scale? I did some checking with Path of Building, and if you have just a helmet, boots, and these gloves, with a 100% increased global defenses mod, you get up to 2,000 global ward. 2,000 ward. Slightly more. And these are not perfectly rolled helmet and boots, by the way. I was calculating it with tier 2 mods on the crown and tier 2 mods on the boots while having a prefix open. So this was with 30% movement speed boots. And you can end up with flat 700 chaos damage. You can pump that up to 3,000 ward with flask effectiveness, or while having a flask active, because the global defenses still work during flask effect. So instead of 200 ward, if I would just have Skin of the Loyal, it would give me 400 ward. So yes, flasks, insane. What can you do with 1,000 flat added chaos damage? Well, basically it works on anything. I decided to check what it actually works on. It works It's global, so it works on everything. So it works on totems. As you see, my totems get chaos damage. It works on, well, melee attacks, obviously. It gives me flat chaos damage. It works on spells. As you can see, chaos. 200, how much? 56. Shit effectiveness, but hey, what can you do? And it works on bear traps as well. Chaos damage. So pretty much any skill in the game that you would want to play benefits from that. So if you want to scale a skill off of flat damage, this might be the way to do it, honestly. You will have to sacrifice the gloves. You won't have to sacrifice the helmet, nor will you have to really sacrifice the boots. In my opinion, the helmet will be the most problematic one, since on boots we don't really aim to get high life boots. We do want movement speed and as many resistances as possible on our boots. So crafting runic boots is not that much of a problem. For the armor, I don't think it's that much of a problem as well, because, well, all you need to do is get a grasping mail. To be fair, all you need to do is a lot. Or you can just use Skin of the Loyal. So this is one of those pieces of gear that could be improved upon. However, the main issue I see is with the helmet. The helmet can give you a fair big chunk of defense, be it health, be it evasion, armor, or energy shield. And a lot of builds can't throw away the helmet. This is not a complete throwaway, since, yeah, sure, you get some ward, but you also get all three suffixes still. You can have this helmet be influenced, you can do whatever you want with it. As long as you keep rolling defenses on it, you're bound to get like a high ward helmet. So it's slightly problematic, but not that big of a sacrifice. The real big sacrifice are obviously the gloves, since they offer little to no benefit besides a bunch of flat damage. Can your build survive without gloves? If yes, slap this in. If no, probably want to stay away from this type of build. Same for flasks. The flasks also I don't think is that much of a sacrifice. Yes, it is a bit of a sacrifice. You won't be using the unique flask either way, so that's not that big of a problem. You can roll pretty much anything you want on the flask itself. I would still prefer going with alchemists. You might want to have extra duration over the increased effect, but I doubt with so much flat damage that you're going to be using this in general career. You're probably only going to be using the flask for bossing. So again, up to your build planning prowess to include or not include flasks in this build. But yeah, the bottom line is I severely underestimated the power of the Nightgrip gloves. You can get a metric ton of chaos damage on your build. There are some other ways also that I didn't mention that you can scale this, but those are standard only or very unobtainable. For example, you can scale it with some legacy jewels on standard, or you could scale it with a single Emperor's jewel that you can get, and that I think is like up to 6 or 7%, which I don't think anyone will buy a 50 exalt jewel that will give them only 5 to 6 global defense. So, in summary, gloves are great. You have to build around it. Go out there and play with whatever crazy build you want to make.